What up, my fellow Survivor lovers? Welcome to the Survivor Historian, part of the Challenge Historian podcast feed. I am your host, Jacob Hullabaugh, born again Survivor superfan, and here with me to break down this continually wonderful season of Survivor 45, as he is every week, is the great and powerful, and this week, maybe or maybe not, has pneumonia, but is still here, the great Tony Lance. Tony, how are you doing and or feeling?
All things considered, I am doing quite well. I have been on pretty much bed rest for the last week and looks like another week ahead. So it's nice to be able to record this at an earlier time so I can still take part. There's Mozzie behind me. It's been touch and go, a lot of coughing, a lot of like chest rattle. So I will be very diligent on my mute button. But yeah, other than that, I'm doing pretty well. I got to watch this episode twice, and I've watched a whole bunch of movies while I've been on bed/couch rest.
Oh, wonderful. Do you have any go-tos, or you've been watching like new movies that you hadn't had time to see before, but now on bed rest, you're like, I can fit
That
them
would
in?
be, yeah, that is the category of ones that I've wanted to see, but because of kids or because of Sarah's not really as interested, I've just sort of missed them. But Apple is coming out with a Monarch series, like the organization in Godzilla, and I realized that I hadn't seen the Godzilla King of Monsters or Godzilla versus Kong, so I watched both of those.
Nice.
And then I went classic. I watched Gone in 60 Seconds, and I forgot. I know how amazing it is because I love that movie, but I forgot how many people were in it. That even just bit parts, like Timothy Oliphant is like one of the other detectives, and like Michael Pena is the guy who they come up to when they're walking the dog to get the keys back. Like so many people.
It's you mentioned Timothy Oliphant, obviously amazing career, wonderful job, great life, but really did that role screwed him over, because that's why he is not Dom in the Fast and Furious, because he was in this movie first and didn't want to do
Yep.
two in a row. That is your Fast and Furious fact for the day. Go pick up your copy of Salute Me Familia if you're a Fast and Furious fan and don't know that I wrote a book about those movies a while back. So feel free to do that. And yes, feel free to use your mute button as necessary. Tony, I will not be deliberate in my editing, because I'm never deliberate in the editing of this
Fair
podcast.
enough.
I edit podcasts for a living. So when it comes to my own, I don't put as much effort into it. And hopefully no one's ever complained. So if you got a complaint to file, don't file it. Just keep listening and keep loving us and keep being here. And we appreciate you and love you for it. We're obviously here to talk about Survivor 45, episode number 7. We both, I had covered earlier in the week the double episode of the challenge that they just decided to drop on us. I don't know if that was always the plan, but it made for a long Wednesday night. That's for damn sure. Dropped 2 podcasts on the Challenge Historian feed, still split up the 2 episodes, did 2 podcasts about it. I just felt for evergreen purposes down the line, if you're doing a rewatch, you're not going to necessarily know to watch those 2 episodes together, the whole thing. I know over on Challenge Fandom, you weren't able to join them this week because of the illness, but they have their recap out by this point as well of that double episode. So make sure, if you're a Challenge fan as well, go listen to both of those podcasts. And if you're not subscribed to Challenge Fandom, use the show notes and hop over there and do just that. As for the agenda here tonight, it's all episode 7. Maybe a little bit of preview of episode 8, because there was a big announcement made in the next week on that I'm sure we're gonna have to at least mention in our wishes or predictions. But the agenda will stay the same as it has been. We're gonna walk through the episode, hit any storyline or thought or opinion worth sharing, then hand out some awards and wrap up with some power rankings and predictions. And I will just say, my power rankings have basically, it's always been like one person has changed or maybe a spot has changed every week through the first 6 episodes. Massive overhaul this week, complete and utter overhaul of the power rankings. I only think one person who I had in it last week is in it again this week, maybe two, but they have changed positions. So we've got that to look forward to. So yeah, Tony, any other thoughts up top? Are you ready to dive into this episode?
The only other thing that I will mention is that since it is both tethered to Survivor and the Challenge, we also have an interview with Desi. Season
I did just see
USA,
that post.
Yeah, so USA 2's winner, female winner. We got to sit down and chat with her and got that one right back out again so that it remains relevant, and she is just as awesome as ever. Absolutely check that out if you haven't. And then we do have a special guest on the recap that I missed. Um, I forget her name. I believe her name might be Melissa. And if not, I apologize to the person whose name is not Melissa. But she is a fan of the podcast. And we got her to come on for the recap. And unfortunately, I missed it. But they said they had a great time and that episode was one for the books, which is nice because it's rare that I get to listen to challenge podcasts like unbiased and don't have to listen to myself, which is nice. So that's why I like listening to your podcast, listening to our podcast when I'm not there. I always make sure to go in and listen because I feel like I've missed something if I'm not there to record because it's such a part of like Friday nights now.
That's awesome. Wow. Oh, cool. Well, yeah, as someone who we were recently texted about this earlier, and no one probably cares about this, but I am someone who doesn't ever listen to. I would totally if I wasn't here for my own podcast, but since it's just me, that would be kind of weird. And there wouldn't be a podcast to listen to. But I would get why you'd want to listen to the ones you're not there for. I am not someone who listens back to my own show. I used to at least be smart enough to like, hey, dude. It's a one-man operation. Just go click play and make sure it sounds like you didn't totally screw something up and not realize it, and you just posted an episode that sounds like garbage or is half missing or something. I used to like at least check and be like, okay, it sounds the first 15 seconds are what they're supposed to be, keep it moving. I don't do that anymore. So again, listeners, if there's ever anything where you're like, hey, it seemed like you missed, well, you forgot part of the episode or like something sounds horrible, please let me know. DMs are always open. I don't post anything on my Instagram account, but I do check the DMs regularly and respond to all of them at Challenge Historian. So
this is last week was the first week that I actually listened back in its entirety because normally like Sarah listens to our podcast, so I'll come in and out of the room and like I'll hear bits and pieces and like pick it up that way. But my friend Annie messaged me and she's like, it's not working. I can't figure out how to download it. What's going on? And I was like, oh shit. So I went to Spotify and hit play and like listened to the first little bit of it and I was like, that works. I said, maybe try just like essentially the old tech routine of turn it off, turn it back on again. And it worked. And she was like, it works. Never mind.
Just try again. Don't do anything different. Just try again. Maybe it'll work.
Yeah, exactly. See what works. And then, so she got hers working. And then I had already listened to just enough so that I was like, you know what? I'm home. I'm on bed rest. I have nothing else that I can do right now. So I sat back and actually listened to our podcast in its entirety for, I think, the first time through. And wow. I'm a fan of us. I think that everybody should be listening to us for all their survivor needs.
I concur, and I'll say hello to future Tony, because if you're going to be on bed rest for another week, maybe you're listening to this right now in the future, and we just created a weird time loop thing, and that's super exciting. So without further ado, Survivor 45, episode number 7, here we go. We start on the newly named Dakuwaka tribe, night 13, day 14. And before we talk about anything that happens, one of the biggest things that happens that they just don't comment on is that we see the tribe name, which we had not heard before when they merged last week or into this week. We had not seen it before. This was the first time it popped up. Technically, I guess this is the first time they're truly all merged on the beach together. And I know you did a little research for us because they don't tell us where the name comes from or what the purpose of the name is. What did you find out there on the internet streets?
So I've heard that it was Kelly who made the final suggestion that flew through. As far as what the name means, it's in Fijian mythology. Dakuwaka is a shark deity and often appears as a fierce sea monster guarding the islands. He was greatly respected by fishermen because he protected them from any danger at sea and its denizens. So I found a photo, and the photo is like totally badass. It's kind of like King Shark, but to the extreme. That's pretty cool. Looks.
I like this. It's badass like, mythical sea beast protector / fighter. Okay, that seems like a worthwhile thing to name the tribe after.
Absolutely. And I mean, like, it's probably one of the better tribe names for like merged tribes. It is not my favorite. My favorite will always be the name was Eniladam, so Eniledam, and it was Malcolm Freeberg who did it and put the name forward and came up with the reason behind it. But in actuality, it's his mother's name backwards, which is Madeline.
That's
So
cool.
he told everyone like, "Oh, it means this in the language of the people from where we are right now." But in actuality, it was just his mother's name backwards.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Was not aware of that. And yeah, so shout out to Malcolm and shout out to Daku Waka. I'll say it a bunch of different ways. Probably every time I say it will sound a little bit different, but majestic shark sea beast creature protector of the sea around Fiji. Love it.
yeah,
And what I don't love though, and what some others on the island are not loving, is Bruce. Bruce
yeah.
is being Bruce again. I guess we could pretty much stop saying Bruce is being Bruce because he is himself at all
Yes,
times, which is great and wonderful and what you're supposed to be doing. But he is all over the place in the beginning of this episode, in the the first couple days, the first day, night and day that they're all on the beach together. He is isolating Katura by like kind of throwing her under the bus in front of their
hard.
supposed allies.
Not
He
even though.
is doing a like father son chat with Caleb that Caleb has no interest in and doesn't
Nope.
understand. And he's doing football drills with Sifu, trying to teach Sifu how to play football. And I'm like, I don't think either of you play football or did. I don't know. Kelly's trying to tell him that all of this is problematic in the sweetest, nicest, best acting job way possible. And he's like, nah, no, like I don't need to change anything. Like I'm running this place. He's everywhere. He's doing all kinds of crazy stuff. What of all of the things he does sticks out to you the most as either the most egregious or the most noteworthy or just the most Bruce of all the things Bruce does?
I tried to get rid of my cat, and she put her claws in my elbow. So she's back. Uh, yes. As far as Bruce goes, the biggest thing for me was calling out Katura in front of Austin and Drew, who like aren't even their tribe
Mm-hmm.
originally. They're not even necessarily working with them beyond the fact that every single person on the beach voted for Caleb,
Mm-hmm.
and like flat out calls her out for being hesitant about putting Caleb's name down. And she said it best in the fact that he tried to throw shade her way on a unanimous vote and tried to distance herself from the tribe, or tried to distance her from the tribe on what was a completely unanimous vote. So everybody should be on a completely level playing field. And he was still trying to separate her and keep her excluded, which seems to be, and again, it's an edit. So we're only seeing the story they want us to see, but it seems like that's been continually what Bruce has been doing, is isolating Katura from everything else that's going on. And so that was big. The fact that like he's talking to Caleb like one of his kids, but also very much like Caleb is exactly like I was when I was younger. So I know how to talk to him and what he needs to hear to grow up to be me, I guess. And it was just like, it was all kinds of weird. And like Kelly did her best to be like, look, maybe just like more low key. And he said that he's been completely honest and he plays his game with absolute honesty. But then he's also said that like he's trying to throw distrust Katura's way. He immediately follows up the sentence, I play with absolute honesty, with everybody's really noticed how Katura and Kendra were super happy at Tribal when Caleb was safe. When in reality, everybody was stoked at Tribal because the shot in the dark worked, not necessarily exclusively because Caleb was safe. Now, Katora is actively working with him, sure, but that doesn't mean that like she was hooting and hollering and everything else because Caleb was safe and Jay was going home. So everything was bad.
Yeah, it's a great read by Katura because she like calls him out in the moment for doing it, and then he
Yeah,
does confirm in confessional, like, yes, that was like this wasn't me being ignorant of what I was doing. I was
yeah.
trying to do this on purpose, and she caught me and called me out. So good read on her part. That's definitely a point for her game and abilities to read the situation.
But then he said he didn't. He said that that wasn't what he was doing, which therefore calls his whole honesty into question
Yeah,
again.
which you were. You also already told us that you were. So I know you're not telling us the second time, you're telling a person in the game or whatever. But It still stands, and
Yeah.
it makes no sense. Even if you want her out, it doesn't make sense as a move of like, let's like that's I don't know. I guess if you want her out, you're trying to isolate her and make her maybe the threat amongst I just don't think it works. I'm like, if you want the person you kind of are working with and who did vote with you on this thing out, then this isn't the right approach. The father son thing with Caleb, I feel vindicated before when I said I felt like Bruce was jealous of Caleb's attention and was kind
Yes.
of having one of those, man, if I was like the younger, fun one that everyone was liking and everything moment. I feel very vindicated. This like tells me that is exactly the type of feelings. And so he tries to assert himself as like, I'm the father figure here. Like I'm the, you not he I don't think he thinks you would be lucky to be me or anything like that,
Yeah.
but kind of gets that type of vibe of like, let me tell you how it is so you can like be like me because
Yeah.
I should be the standard here, not you. So there's definitely some feelings like that going on from him, I feel like. And then yeah, while I applaud Kelly for doing what I would say is a bang up job on the acting and how the approach she takes to trying to curb some of
Yeah.
the things he's doing by like being very jovial about it, like not being too direct, but kind of like saying it in a nice way, laughing with it, the whole thing. She's doing the absolute best you could do because she, as everyone there, more than anyone else, because she's the one who has a little bit of reliance on him at this point in the game based on the connections they've built. It's not that great of an acting job because it just can't be because the frustration has to come through or the like
Oh yeah.
the anger has to come through of like, you've got to be kidding me, dude. Like, come on. You're not even gonna list this, whatever. But Bruce is just so in his own world. He's just
Yeah.
so in his own complete and everything. The way he thinks whatever's happening is like it's his own reality, truly, that he's living in, because it should be obvious that he's not as in command of everything as he seems to like come off thinking, like if I say it it'll just happen type of attitude. And so yeah, I'm nervous for my girl Kelly. She's doing the best, I think the best thing she can do in this situation. But I'm a little nervous for my girl Kelly, who I am not nervous for, who I have not ever fallen out of love with, but was a little perturbed that we only got one episode of this version of. I put in our outline, Tony, and I will
Yep.
say, I'll actually, before I say what it is, I'll just read straight what was in my notes. I started, Emily and Caleb go for a chat. And then next line down, first comment about it, all caps in bold, fuck yes, villain Emily is back. 3 exclamation points. Because Emily don't give a F about Caleb anymore. She doesn't even care. She's just like, nope. I voted for you because I needed to distance myself, and we're not coming back around. I am distancing. I'm gonna lie straight to your face. But in confessional, she's just like, yeah, it hurts. I owe him so much, but I don't care. I'm here for me and my game. And I'm just like, hallelujah, here we go. She has
Risk
learned,
assessment.
she's advanced, but she has kept that cold-hearted everything and just attitude that she needs, and I love it. And I hope it doesn't really play out. She never gets to like really, you know
Yeah.
Caleb will maybe watch this back and be like, oh, that's a bummer that like Emily wasn't really actually rocking with me anymore. But it would have been amazing if she was the one that kind of put the last nail in the coffin, so to speak, by the end of the episode. But she's back. She's cold-hearted again, and I love it. Were you as shocked as I was by this, what ultimately ended up not mattering? The storyline doesn't matter. We probably shouldn't be spending much time on it, but I was just so excited that I was like, wow, I can't believe she doesn't give an F about him or this relationship anymore, like totally cutting it off.
It was perfect because it really showed that as much as she has grown, she is still just as aware as she was initially of threats in the game and threats to her game, and that like absolutely like action fast risk assessment, because she has that conversation with Caleb, and then you get the confessional of just like, because of how much heat is on Caleb, I have already resigned myself to the fact that Caleb will not be in this game for much longer, and I can't save him from that. And that's the smart way to do it. Is it's not necessarily that like she's now out to get Caleb. It's that in order for her game to progress beyond where he's going to be, because it's clear that like it's a matter of time before everybody just gets Caleb out because he will win, that she's able to say, look, I like Caleb. If it wasn't for Caleb, I wouldn't be here now. But in order to continue to be here, I need to cut my losses. I already have this relationship with Austin and Drew, and I need to keep rocking with that. And that makes total sense.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that she acknowledged it, because so often you'll have people that will go down with that person because they're not willing to kind of pivot away and make that move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she owes Caleb for being there now, but if she would have stuck with him and ended up on the jury next week, she would have owed Caleb for being on the jury next week, the same as she owed him for still being in the game after the first, the first vote or two. So it's amazing. Villain Emily's back in my mind. I'm gonna say she's a villain, even though she's still a wonderful human being and isn't really being that villainous at all. Is just being a very smart player. And we'll get to the power rankings at the end, but she's back in it. That's for damn sure.
So's
We'll just
Austin.
tease that.
Or actually, Austin is not in my power rankings at the moment, spoiler alert, but he was also incredibly smart with that conversation with Emily, like the follow-up when she went back and she was talking about Caleb, and she said, like, it really sucks because I'm really the only one that he trusts here at this point. And they were talking about the potential of Kelly being gone. And Austin has the forethought to actually say, like, Kelly being gone is actually bad for my game at this point, because if Kelly's gone, then everybody else knows that I then have an idol because I am the last of the three. So her being in the game means that my advantage is actually lessened right now, and nobody knows about his idol that he has secondary. So really, it's interesting because so often people will be like, I need to get this person out. I need to get all three of these, like the other two people out. I need the full advantage right now. Whereas he's like slow playing it and saying, the heat's on me a little bit because I am one of the bigger threats within Reba. I need to find a way to get that lowered. And what's going to keep that lowered is Kelly still being in this game, despite the fact that he doesn't necessarily want to work with her at this point and doesn't have like a vested interest in her getting far in the game. Just a matter of him wanting to make sure that she's still there right now so that he doesn't have that added target. And I think that's super smart.
And it only works. He might feel differently if he didn't have an immunity idol already, but as you said, and I will bring back up for potential gameplay award, I hadn't picked up on it last week, and no one there picked up on the fact. I had picked up on they showed him not vote and like therefore take his immunity idol to a full-fledged immunity until final 5 if he wants to use it anytime till then. But no one else picked up on the fact that Jeff only read 11 votes and not 12. And that's how, no one else knows anything's going on other than Drew, who knows about the idol. And I believe Dee and Julie know about that idol now. Whether they know if they've, maybe we'll find out next week if they picked up on like he extended it or if he tells them or not, we'll see. But he's able to feel, if he didn't have that, maybe he feels a little different. Like, let's get Kelly out of here so I can have an idol, even if it brings heat. I have an idol, but he's got both, and he's definitely sitting in the most advantageous place in the game from an advantage standpoint. That is for sure. And with that, let's throw things over to our first individual immunity challenge. So we have our first immunity challenge, and before we talk about it or performances from it, who wins, all of that, let's just get out of the way and try not to have to continue to bring it up through the rest of the episode, because I think we both feel the same about this, and we talked about feeling this way last week and really the week before even. They are divided into 2 groups. They do play all at the same time, but as the 2 groups, and there is then going to be 2 tribes split in 2 tribal councils, and they're not going to be interacting the rest of the episode. And I think we are in lockstep on our feelings of this, but remind me and everyone listening, do you like this, or would you prefer this was actually one full group, one tribe, even if it was voting out 2 people in the end somehow? I don't know how it would work, but do you like that it's, yet again, we're not actually a full tribe all going to a tribal council together?
I would like to keep this as a PG-13 episode, so I will use my 1 F-bomb in this area.
I think I already used one.
Stupid.
Do we get one each, or one an
no,
episode?
I say that, but I've already used mine as well because I already said something else.
Yeah,
So
well,
I
I'll make
guess,
sure to mark this one explicit for y'all.
yeah,
Sorry
this is
about that if you got the
explicit.
kiddos in the car. We'll cut it out. We'll be good kids from here on out.
Yeah, except for this part where I think it's fucking stupid because it's like they've merged. They have a merged tribe name. They all have their buffs. When they got back from tribal, Caleb said, "Allow me to be the first to say it. Welcome to the merge." And then the first challenge for individual immunity is like, so here's what we're going to do. Everyone's going to pick a rock. And then based on that rock, I hope that all of your relationship building and strategy works out for you and that you didn't forget your bag somewhere. But if you really want to do it this way, I have put the research in, I've put the thought in. Here's how you do it. If you are really adamant that you have to have two different groups, still split them. Still do it regularly, like you draw rocks into your two tribes or your two teams. And then those two teams all compete. One person gets immunity from both. The person who's up the very longest gets reward as well. They go to reward, then they all come back. They're still all one tribe, and they all go to tribal council and vote somebody out, one somebody. And that's how you do it. You've got half the people who've got a reward. You've got two people out of your 12 that are safe. Everybody else is fair game, because that means that the people that go to the reward, the 6 people, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're working together at all. So then you've got this conversation of how much of a conversation do we actually have with these people while we're sitting down? Because then you're going to have a much cagier conversation. And I don't think that that detracts from the actual gameplay. If anything, I think that it adds to it, because even I believe it was Kelly that said it at Tribal. She said, like, we have not yet had the opportunity where everyone has been on the table. So it's just these random rock draws of people that are safe versus up for elimination. So if you have those like 12 people, even if it still goes the same way and D and Kelly are the two that are safe, I don't guarantee that either Sifu or Caleb is the one to go. It very easily could have been Bruce who would have gone if everybody was there together. That was Mozzie deciding to be Thumper from Bambi.
Mozzie agrees, and I agree
Yeah,
too. Bruce, I think Bruce is gone this episode if they're all voting together. I think
yeah,
the wins were strongly in his against him across the board, and he was the biggest beneficiary by far of
yeah,
splitting back up and niching down again to where you were a little more easily could rely on, like, I just need one or two people out of this
yeah,
group, and so I'll lean back on the one or two that I had before. I'm with you. I don't like it. I like your idea, but I like, you don't have to vote two people out. I guess if it's for the timing and the pace of the game and everything, great. But honestly, then just do tribal council like back-to-back nights or whatever with the whole
yeah.
group. I don't know. Um, yeah, I'm all for doing what you said of, like, we could still have two teams, and therefore we can do the reward element of the ultimate winner gets the reward, and then, some people get to eat, some people don't, some people are over here away from the group, all the, that's all good, but I just want all 12 of them to go to a tribal council together and all 12 vote again. I guess we're saying all this last week, they did all go to a tribal council together and vote. It's just only
But
half of
still,
them were up for,
yeah,
so they at least all voted, but only half of them were able to be voted for. I want to see 10 people able to be voted for, 12 people voting, and what happens and what that dynamic is. And yes, I hate it doesn't come in to bite them, and we're getting ahead of ourselves, but I'll just say it here because you referenced it. Drew leaves his bag, and thankfully it does not come into play. But unlike how we talk about Matt from last season, where like him not having his bag really didn't actually matter, the way they like kind of made it seem like this is the reason he went home, when it's like it wouldn't really have done anything in the end. But like, it's cool to say, and like annoying that he didn't still have that. In this situation, like if Drew has an out. He has a like, I have an advantage that allows me to, it's basically an immunity idol of different sorts, but it allows me to skip tribal council. And as I'm walking to this new beach, I'm thinking I'm clearly one of the people that is most probable to be targeted here. It could have definitely bit him in the ass, and it all would have been because like you shouldn't have to go take all of your shit to every single one of everything you do. Maybe that's just a new rule in Modern Survivor. Hey, no matter where you're going, what you're doing, for what reason, how mundane or not, always carry all of your stuff. You just have to,
Yeah.
and whatever. But
Well, and they say, like, I listened to On Fire this week, which whatever, but the main takeaway for me, and like I understand because Rick Devens mentioned it on Twitter, where like they could have brought their bags. The bags are heavy. You don't always want to bring them. So in a way, it's a game decision. Like the same, and this is he said the part about they're heavy and you don't always want to bring them with you. What I'm saying is, in addition to that, the perception is then that taking or leaving your bag is a game decision as much as deciding to work with one person versus another. Where if you decide to not take your bag with you, that means the contents of that bag remain where they are until you get back to them. So whether something happens where you don't get back, fine. I don't agree with that. I think that if, like, it doesn't spoil the twist for the players of like, we're sending you somewhere else. If they're going to then like tell them, just make sure you bring your bags, or just blanketed every single time that they leave camp, tell them to bring their bags. So then you miss out on like people for like not taking them, because although it didn't impact Drew, everybody thought that Sifu had an idol, and they were pretty sure that he did. And Sifu had a fake idol, and he had his shot in the dark. So if he thinks the votes are against him, he can try pushing that fake idol. If it doesn't work, he can then be like, screw it, I'm going to use my shot in the dark because my vote isn't going to be enough to turn these tides one way or the other. But instead, he didn't have his bag either. So he didn't have his fake idol. He didn't have his shot in the dark. So much like Drew couldn't up and leave tribal council, Seafood didn't really have a game to play at that point if they decided that they wanted to vote him out, because it was Drew and Emily and Sifu and then 3 former Bello. So yeah, like I definitely think that they should just tell them point blank, everybody needs to bring their stuff with them. And I'm sure that people will say like, well, didn't they watch it? But they filmed 2 seasons back to back. And I'm pretty sure that it would have been, I think the math works out that it would have been these ones. So yeah,
maybe, and you don't even have to tell them. Guess what? New production rule: if you send someone to a beach that they didn't come from, your bag's going to be there. We
yeah,
move everyone's bag.
yeah,
That way we don't have to give away the twist. We don't have to tell you. And the new rule is, if you want something with you, we will make sure your bag follows you wherever you go. So don't be hiding your stuff somewhere not in your bag. Then you're out of luck, but your bag will follow you. That's easy. That's easy for them to do. And you don't have to ruin the surprise, because they should want, like, they put the advantages in the stuff in the game for a reason. It's more interesting to have the people be able to use all their stuff than it is for us to have these arguments of like, oh my God, can you believe Drew got screwed because he didn't have his bag with him? It's like, it's kind of interesting, and like, we're upset because we like Drew and now he's gone home for this reason, sort of thing. So yeah, we're clearly not fans of the dividing into 2 tribes, but that's what they do. They play an old classic. I don't actually remember the actual
get a
name.
grip.
What?
Get a grip.
Get a grip. There we go. Yes.
Yep.
Spot on. And they, compared to, I did see the Survivor fact checker, put out all the stats about the history of this, and this particular group did not perform nearly to the standard of past times that this game has been played, at least of all the ones that we know. There's some of them that we don't know the times from some of the earliest seasons where they did this, but we presume it was at least as long as the 17-ish minutes that Dee and Kelly ultimately go here. That's to take nothing away from Dee and Kelly, who do a wonderful job and crush it. It is just to say that this has gone for multiple hours before. So some people, it's, Survivor endurance stuff. Sometimes there's like the insane ones, and sometimes there is, you're on the beach and you're like, please, can all of us do like a regular good job of this? Like, someone's going to win, but like, can I not go up against someone that can do this for 2 hours? Could this be a little bit more of a even playing field? This is kind of an even playing field ish. Dee and Kelly like kind of smoke everyone. I don't know what the gap is between them and third, but they by far seemed the most comfortable the entire time. I I had Kelly when they split up the two teams, which one side we had Jake D, Austin, Julie, Caleb, Katura. The other was Bruce, Sifu, Kendra, Kelly, Emily, and Drew. I highlighted Kelly immediately and was like, I think she's gonna be able to win this for her side. On D's side, I was interested to see Austin and Caleb if they could figure out, as the kind of ones that have shown as far as the just like random athleticism type of stuff goes. But D and Kelly had the strategy from the beginning. D's got that big toe energy. We
was
got
gonna
that
say
reference, that big toe energy. It
you've,
already
you've
gets her a
failed to
win.
take into account Chekhov's toes.
Yeah. um, which like legitimately matters, but also just looks painful to like be clinging on by your big toe. Doesn't look any less, enjoyable than it doesn't look enjoyable for anyone out there. Were there any other performances that stood out to you, good or bad? I'm trying to think. I wasn't really surprised by when anyone really fell at any point. And I wasn't surprised that it seemed, I thought highly of D and Kelly's abilities, and this seemed set up for them. And they both had the physical and the strategy side, especially D was the one I think she ultimately wins because she figured
She
out
was
as
like
she kept
sitting on it.
adjusting how to switch to the like kind of using leverage to
Yeah.
hold her against, like use her legs much more in her arms and like lean in a position. Yeah, did anything stand out to you about performances, good or bad?
For some reason I was surprised that Kendra was out as quickly as she was. Just because I know that she like her profession is a bartender, but I also take her for like very much of like a yogi, and I felt like she should have been up there for longer. And I was also kind of surprised that Emily went out as quickly as she did because she was like the
She was
challenge
out in
had barely
second.
started, but on Fire they had talked about because in the past like everybody starts at the top, and Jeff like specifically mentioned, and I didn't notice until the second time through, simply because having listened to On Fire, I made a mental note of it. He said like anybody can start wherever they want because like some people have issues with heights or whatever the case may be. So they basically said, look, you can start wherever you want on this pole, but ultimately when you hit the ground, you're out. So the further up you are, the more opportunities you have to stay in. But there were some people who said nah, like height's not really my thing. I'm gonna start a bit lower on the
I don't want to
pole.
fall from up there. I'm not
Well,
scared of
yeah,
the height, like sitting up there
no,
looking at it, but I just don't want to fall from up there. It seems dangerous.
like I've seen Michelle Fitzgerald, I've seen Andrea Belke. Like some of these people hit hard, and
Yeah.
especially if they're up there for a while, because then your legs are asleep. Like
Yeah, we
I
had
have,
Drew this one being like,
yeah,
my legs are completely numb and I can't feel them and I'm kind of nervous to drop, but
yeah,
like I physically need to drop. But like, and I was like,
yeah.
oh damn, like I don't know, as a long, lanky guy, this could be weird, this could be awkward. And he thankfully
I've
kind of shimmies down.
Yeah, I have walked on a foot that's asleep, and it sucks, and you have no balance,
Yeah, I
and
don't
it
want to
hurts.
land from 10 feet up.
Yeah, hell no. So like I I get why some people started lower, but Jeff did say that like from a visual standpoint, and I do agree on the rewatch, it's not as it doesn't look like it's going to be as like intense when everybody's starting on different levels on the pole. So what they said they would go back to in future seasons is go up to the top, and then if you want to drop down as soon as it starts, totally fine. But everybody starts from the top, and I get that. Like from a visual standpoint, and also just from a competitive standpoint, because then you immediately know the people that are gonna kind of move themselves lower on the pole, and that's gonna be their strategy. But I understand why they did it this way this time. I understand why they'll do it a different way another time.
Yeah, for sure. So D and Kelly get the win. D gets the overall win with that big toe energy to get her group the reward. And we head back to two separate beaches to watch two different tribes scramble and go to tribal council. We'll start with the losing tribe that goes to Old Lulu Beach and talk about them first here. So we had Lulu and then we had Nulu. Now we got like Relu. I don't
Pulu,
know. Yeah, yeah. We'll come
Pulu.
up.
There you go.
There we go.
Because they
So
lost.
they We already mentioned Drew doesn't have his bag, and it could matter. Thankfully, it ultimately doesn't. We've already covered that, so we don't need to get ourselves upset again here. But this group basically comes down to Bruce wants Sifu, kind of seems like the easy thing for him to do, and he knows his name could be out there a little bit. Kendra wants Bruce, and it really pretty much comes down to Kelly pulling the strings because, yet again, I know Sifu doesn't, as you said, doesn't have his bag or doesn't have some of the things where he could have maybe played. But he kind of just, as far as we get to see, doesn't do a whole lot, has a few conversations, and otherwise just kind of hangs out with his fate in the air. And it really comes to Kelly having to be the one of Kendra wants Bruce, but we should probably go the easy route here. We should probably all get on the same page and wait till we're back in one big group. That way, if we need to all be together once we're in that big group again, like we need to wait and see before we get rid of a number of ours, or I get rid of someone who considers me their number one in the game. And she's got to then be the one that kind of convinces Kendra to go along. Was there anything other than, that dynamic playing out that stuck out to you about the scramble between this losing tribe?
Two things. So Kelly immediately apologized to everyone for not winning
Yeah, it's the worst.
because, and then in her confessional, she said like, because I didn't win, somebody doesn't make the jury, and that's on me. And I was like, nah, man, like if the person who didn't make the jury, it's on them for not winning and beating you and beating D in order to get reward and be safe.
Because of a rock you drew.
Yeah, exactly. But the other thing too, Drew was actually the one who threw Sifu's name out first to Bruce, which I thought was super smart because, again, Drew has lost the ability to peace out. So he's now at Tribal and has to make it work. He can see the writing on the wall. He doesn't want to pitch Emily because Emily is his number. And if they're going for Reba, it's him or Sifu. So if he can get ahead of that and start putting Sifu's name out there, then like that's all the better for him. So I have to give Drew props on that one because he was very quick to float it out. And he did toy with the idea of like Bruce being a smarter move long term, but he could very easily see that like the numbers weren't really swirling that way. So he then just became Sifu needs to go. And he's done that a couple of times. So we already know that like Sifu is not a number for him and Emily absolutely is. So I gotta give him props for being able to go to Bruce immediately and be like, look, I'm just trying to get through this vote. I'm fine with anyone. I'm totally fine with Sifu if that's how you want to go. And threw that out there as an option rather than letting Bruce marinate on it and possibly say Emily's name.
Yeah, very good by him to be quick to the punch, and even if he wouldn't have been, thankfully he is going up against Sifu, who does not seem to be quick to the the politicking at all here. Again, maybe we just don't see it. I don't know. And he also again didn't have his items that could have helped him play a little stronger of a game. I was it was interesting that there wasn't the Bruce talk really didn't get it didn't get more than I thought it would be more. I thought I would have a more of a question when they went to tribal of this could be either one, because I thought there was a valid argument that could be made if Emily, Drew, and Sifu got together and knew like Kendra's willing to vote with us here. Like there is a four that makes sense that in theory, all of us we could kind of trust if all of us stood together and agreed that we were going to do it, they would actually believe it. And even then that like Kelly would be, we could tell Kelly we were going to do this and it would be okay. Like she wouldn't, totally freak out or wouldn't cause anything too bad. So I don't know. Maybe people do see Sifu as this big threat that when we get to tribal, we'll talk about, he thinks everyone sees him as this big threat. And that's why he's going out, when in reality, it's just the second or third time that's come around is like Sifu's kind of the easy thing to do here, and to all play defense more or less versus offense. And finally playing defense will eventually catch him in the butt. But yeah, I was surprised that how quickly, especially given that it was Kendra was the one we got the most focus of like being the most pro, let's vote out Bruce, being like, I would think if she's going around saying that enough, that there would have at least been one conversation between the four non-Kelly Bruce of like we could all get together and we have 4 and could vote for Bruce. So a little
There
surprised by that.
was there was a conversation. I remember Sifu and Kendra being part of it where they talked about Bruce, and then they were just like, "Yeah, Bruce," and then that was kind of it. But for me, I had the same thought. I was like, "This is like ideal. Get rid of Bruce time." But I think what happened, and I think if Kelly would have beat D and they would have gone to reward, then yes, I think
Because
that
Bruce
Bruce
would have
has a
acted
much
like Bruce
higher
at the
chance.
reward.
No, because then Bruce makes jury. Because Kelly has him as a number right now, which means Kelly
Yeah,
also has him as a jury vote because he keeps saying that she's his number one.
that's
And
so true.
if
Really smart.
if they won and they were on the reward side and went second and that person voted out makes the jury, I think that Kelly has a lot harder time taking out Sifu than taking out Bruce. But because she knew that she was basically throwing away a jury vote if she takes out Bruce before he makes the jury, that's I think why we didn't see as much Bruce action as we could have. And I think in the coming weeks, in the coming episodes, I think we will see Kelly a lot more willing to get rid of a Bruce because she still has strong relationships with Kendra, Katura, and Jake. But also, if she can make it that, like, I'm sure everybody is like as perturbed by Bruce, like on Reba as Bello. So she can possibly do it with no blood on her hands with a full group. And then that secures her a jury vote.
Yeah, that's really smart. I hadn't been thinking about the jury aspect of it. And I will also apologize to there was a conversation now that I look back at my notes. Drew, Kendra, Sifu, and Emily they were the first conversation we pretty much see on the old Lulu beach, but then all the conversations after that, it like never that group never gets back together. And it makes me almost question even more that they started there and it was like, do you 4 maybe should have rounded each other up a second time to like be like, hey, we've all had a bunch of other conversations now. Do we still feel like this is possible? But yeah, they head to tribal thinking it's one of 2 people. And before we talk about that tribal council, let's head back over to the winner side and talk about what they're up to. So they, of course, go to the sanctuary first, and this group is one more time is Jake, D, Austin, Julie, Caleb, and Katura. So a Reba heavy with D, Austin, Julie, all 3 there, and then a 2 and a 1 of the Bello and Lulu. And most of between the sanctuary and then the scramble on the beach, this really all came down to me. The main storyline out of it was Jake doesn't want to be told what to do anymore. Jake is ready to make a decision that is his decision and he leads on. And so that in turn means he needs to tell someone else what to do, which eventually leads to him being the one that tells Katura, hey, me and you got to go to Rocks with only one other person. That's the plan. Me, you, and one other person go to Rocks. What do you say? All to save Caleb, our guy Caleb. Um, yeah, it's not a great plan. I will say I totally understand why Jake is like, I've reached the point in the game. I've got good relationships with everyone. I'm friendly with everyone. I feel like I'm in a good spot. I don't have to make some crazy huge move, although what he is purporting to do here kind of is a crazy huge move. In the way that the path they lay out to it actually working is a pretty would be pretty big and pretty ballsy to say the least. But I get why he's like, I kind of want to start not just continually to like who has the most votes. Okay, I'll vote with you guys again this week. We're friends. I'm friends with everyone. He wants to do something. I just don't think he eventually executes that well on it. And I think it's, it comes back to the Rocks again. The fact of the matter is, it's 3 of your 6 are the 3 of the 4 people that are in the strongest alliance throughout the whole game. They don't fully know that, but they kind of do. They know Reba's been really tight this whole time. And the only reason that they finally lost someone in Jay was because of the unanimous vote getting negated by a shot in the dark. So they know those 3 are strong. They're fighting a really uphill battle. I appreciate that they fought the battle, but I think it goes a little too far when it comes down to our only idea here, our only plan is Caleb, me, you, we got to convince Katura that she's got to tie it 3-3 and that we can then get Austin on a revote to flip sides. And if not, we'll just go to rocks. And
Yeah.
yeah, it just doesn't seem that appealing if I'm Katura. And she, is a little wishy-washy about it the whole time on the beach, as she should be.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it makes perfect sense to go after Julie rather than Austin, because really you want to. D is arguably like one of the stronger players in the game, and you want to get rid of her second. It's textbook Survivor. And I understand Jake looking at it and saying, based on what I know of Austin, I can probably convince him to change his vote and vote out Julie rather than go to rocks. And especially with us as a viewer, knowing that he has a full fledged idol, for one. He's got the backup steal a vote that will become an idol, providing Kelly is out of the game. And like, he's got all those things that he's going to have to play through in his head to say, do I really want to walk out of the game with all this on a rock to save Julie's game when I can do damage control with D, and Austin and Emily are already my people? So, in theory, it makes sense. It's not great odds because really it's Katura and Jake would be drawing rocks and Austin would be drawing a rock. But then Austin would also have to hold his own against two lawyers and a salesman to not be convinced to switch his vote and that it's the right thing for him to do,
I
which
didn't
which is
realize
kind of
that.
funny. And I didn't think of it at all until I was watching it the second time, and I was like, right, Katura and Jake are both lawyers, and Caleb is one of the slickest talkers in the game. And then they would be the three that would be trying to convince Austin to switch his vote to Julie. So I don't know that it would work. I know that in some, like, if you play the scenario out 100 times, there are going to be some times where he totally switches his vote. Um, I think where they actually messed up was telling Katura about Bruce's idol, because in doing so, they
Didn't
told
gain the
they
trust they thought it was going to gain.
no,
It
if
backfired.
anything, they lost the trust, because it then meant, like, Caleb telling her fine, like, that's, he told her that they had the idol. He could very easily have said, like, here's the deal, it was Bruce's idol. Bruce being Bruce, he wanted to tell everyone individually that he had an idol so that he could have those conversations so that he could be in control of the narrative. That makes total sense for what we know of Bruce and how Bruce is playing this game. But then when you factor in the fact that, like, Jake's acting actually did them a disservice, like, if he wouldn't have done all that, then they actually probably could have just said, like, Bruce was the one who wanted to tell everybody individually. I had no idea that he didn't tell you. I'm just trying to get all my ducks in a row for this vote because we don't have our full alliance. We only have part of it, and I need to know that everyone's on the same page. But Jake being like, nah, like, that's why I lost my rings. I didn't really lose them. Like, and that's all well and good. I'm not discrediting the fact that they laid all their cards on the table, because they need to, going if they hope to, like, move forward in the game. But it just completely backfired on what they actually wanted that outcome to be, of building trust, because it gave her the full knowledge that if she stays in her current alliance, she's on the bottom,
Yeah.
just the same as if she tries her luck with the rest of the people that are still playing. So what if she's still on the bottom there? She's not changing her position in the game. She's just on a different bottom.
Yeah, if you're going to be on the bottom of the bigger group that has more power, and both more power and more people to then sway to maybe pass and get up from the bottom of the group or break off and do a new thing. Yeah, for them, it just, in their mind, they're solidifying trust, but what they're really doing is they don't know they currently have her trust. And by telling her this thing, they're telling her, you actually didn't have our trust and you didn't know that until right now, but we're telling you you didn't so that we could tell you you do again. Like, it's revealing this step that they think they need to overcome, but hasn't actually happened yet. And so in reality, they need to keep their mouth shut, and that she's already with them for the moment and doesn't realize that, wait a minute, you guys had kind of picked Bruce over me. I didn't know that before. I thought we had just all not gotten to vote out Bruce yet and wanted to and just hadn't yet. And
And
so,
that's the thing, right? Like, I know that her and Caleb were tight, and I feel like that is still just as accurate. Like, Caleb not telling her about Bruce's idol, I don't necessarily think was because he didn't trust Katura. It was a matter of like, it's Bruce's information to give.
Yeah.
At this point, it's not something that I feel that Katura needs to know in order for us to continue to play together. I think that he was arguably like almost as tight with Katura as he was with Emily, really, because he doesn't have that relationship with Bruce, not with Kendra, doesn't really seem to have that with Kelly, and to a lesser extent with Jake, but not on the same level as Katura or Emily. So I think that Jake was the one who really had more distance to cover in order to kind of get on that same page. And not to say that Jake threw it, like screwed it up for them. They both, after having those conversations, she wasn't like, she knew what she needed to do. But I think that Jake had more ground to cover as far as being like tight with Katura than Caleb did.
Yeah. I think they could have got, if they don't tell her, I think they could have convinced her to, hey, let's tie the vote once. And if they would have pointed out what you did of like, let's tie the vote once, the three of us can convince Austin to vote with us. And if we can't, I don't, and if Caleb should have been like, and if we can't, I don't expect you guys to draw rocks. You can fold, but like give us a
Yeah.
chance to try to convince Austin
Yeah.
in the moment. I think we can do it. Me now talking, I think they could have done it for sure for the reasons you laid out. It would have in the moment kind of made sense for Austin to fold if put in that position. But yeah, I think that Caleb's best play would have been, hey, we've been rocking together. Our only chance of me not going home and you not losing a number is we tie this thing 3-3 and we take our chances not of trying to convince Austin right now on the beach to vote with us because it's not going to happen, but put him in the pressure spot. You guys give me like one or two, we'll go to rocks comments and
Yeah.
we'll try. And if not, I get it and I'll go home. But like
Yeah.
this is the only thing I've got to work with. That's a really hard thing for Caleb to kind of reckon with, of like if he actually in the moment was like, let's try the plan that most likely ends up with you guys voting me out. I get, but retroactively, as we look back with hindsight, I think that's would have been the only way they could have actually got to the situation of getting Katura to vote with them and tying it and taking their chances. And maybe
Yeah.
Austin would have folded, maybe he wouldn't have. We won't know. And that's because we haven't talked about the tribal council that we will talk about in a moment. But before, we're chronological around here. So
Yeah.
before we get to their tribal council and what ultimately happens, let's go back over to the losing tribe, plus Kelly, who I don't want to be calling one of the losers because she was a winner, but the tribe that did not win the reward. Let's talk about their tribal council. So no jury for whoever gets voted out from this first group, which is, that's got to sting for sure. And Sifu ultimately gets voted out. I don't find the deliberation and the discussion to be all of that interesting, other than Sifu does give the like, everyone thinks I'm a threat comment. I'm like, I don't think you're reading this the right way. I do feel like this was a defensive move. Everyone plays defense by voting out the kind of easy vote versus offense to try to get someone they're actually threatened by in the game. I think it should have been Bruce though. If I'm in
Yeah.
this group, I think they should have voted Bruce. I think I kind of made that clear in, my commentary about them on the beach. I think they had the numbers if they had the right conversation repeatedly with that group. And I think Sifu is just a floating number out there. So while I get playing defense and doing the easy thing at this stage in the game, when you're split into the two tribes, and especially because it's Drew that kind of this would hinge on being the aggressor, the kind of going on offense, and he's in such a bad position with these two drives. So like, I get it, but I felt the whole time I was like, Sifu's about to get voted out, but I feel like they should be voting out Bruce. And it would also, I don't know, I don't dislike Bruce by any means, but I will
No.
admit I would have kind of laughed if the end of his story would have been the one that made the merge but got voted out and wasn't allowed to be on jury. And it was like, well,
And
dude,
Katura
you
didn't
already
do
got
it.
to be here for those 2 weeks that one time, so you don't get to be here for these 2 extra weeks this time. And it would have been like, there's like some poetic, like sick joke in that a little
Yeah.
bit that, I would have at least been able to laugh about and, would have sucked for him the way it ultimately sucks for Sifu here.
I feel like I agree that like as far like from a strategic standpoint, at least what we've seen, I don't necessarily see Sifu as big of a threat as he perceives himself to be. However, based on like what he does for a living, and then you factor in how many individual immunity challenges are balanced, I think that Sifu could have very easily been a person who continually wins individual immunity once you get to those kind of challenges. So it could have been something where, yes, it makes the most sense to get rid of Sifu right now. Reba is going to be a lot easier, a lot more willing to cut him because he's the fifth out of a tight four. But he could also be the one who just like keeps winning individual immunity challenges when it comes down to it because they're all balance based or they're all endurance or whatever the case may be. Um, as far as Bruce goes, it could be that Kelly had the same conversation that I had mentioned about like being a jury member that like to Kendra to say like, look, if we get rid of him now, he's not on the jury. If we get rid of him tomorrow, then at least he's potentially a jury vote for one of us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's too good of a point. And I had already kind of moved past the fact that you made that the best point earlier. And so apologies that I make you make it again here.
Oh,
But
no
yeah,
worries.
that is likely the reason why they had to go. Because I think, and maybe even Kelly does say it, or someone says it at some point, Sifu is a wild card and we would have no idea who he would vote for in jury. And yeah, to your point, the smart thing to do is to put people in the jury that you have feel pretty confident, even if it's not you. It's
Yeah.
good to have the knowledge of I'm pretty confident I know who that person's going to vote for, barring something wild and crazy happening to sway their opinion because someone played such an amazing game or did something
Yeah.
so monumental and crazy that's going to overcome that's the person they're riding for. So yeah, he gets voted out. Is it fair or is it foul that someone does make the merge, gets the buff, and then doesn't get to be in the jury? Is this common in
It's not.
I
It's not
felt
really.
like it's not, because I know it's been
Yeah.
common to have the kind of transition episode and moment where it's like you're all on one beach, but one of you is not making the jury. But
Yeah.
this seemed like an extra, like,
Yeah.
a little over the top that they were like, we did the transition thing where you kind of all knew, but at this point you all know we're coming here. No, we're all on the one beach, but we haven't all made the merge. We haven't all made jury anything yet. And so you go through that, and now everyone does have that feeling, as you said, the episode opens with Caleb saying, "Welcome to the merge" and everything.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone says it directly, but I would assume they all think at that point, we are here until the end, either in the game or on the
Yeah.
jury. I think I would have that feeling if I made the merge,
I think so.
and
Yeah.
I would be bummed if I make the merge and don't get to be on the jury. I think it's so, obviously you get to be there for 2 more weeks. You get to have a hand in who wins $1 million, the whole thing. You get to be in the last episode, every episode. So
Yeah.
that's fun. All the things. But I don't love that they did this and that they have
So
one more person who doesn't make it.
yeah, it's kind of weird, and like I get it because then you've got 9 on jury, 3 at final tribal. Like, I guess that's
No, because they
no,
had
because you have
12, so
because
now they
we
have
had 12,
11.
so
So
we'd
it's
have
three
11.
apiece.
So
Yeah.
do we then have do we have 9 on the jury in a final 2? Maybe that's what we're pitching this time around, and that's
Has
their big
9
twist.
consistently been that the jury is?
They try to have an uneven number so that it doesn't make a
I mean, you
like
could be a
it's
tie vote regardless, though, because you're voting on 3 people.
yeah,
So
I know,
yeah, if
but
it's 2 people to vote on, I would want that uneven number, because I'd had that thought too of like, wait a minute, they're going to do 8. Like that doesn't make
yeah,
sense to have an even number. And I was like, well, you can still, when you're voting for 3 people, you can tie with any number. It doesn't
yeah,
matter as much, but the more votes you have, the more variability, the less likely a tie is. So the less votes you have, the more likely by some small percentage is the probability that there could be a tie. But mostly I just felt bad for Sifu. I'd be like, in
well,
that
yeah,
position, it just kind of would feel like an unnecessary gut punch. I'm down for the one gut punch that is,
yeah,
I was on the beach with everyone, but I was right there. I didn't make the merge. Like that's the appropriate thing. And it's, interesting about all these shows, when you like make the last something before the next phase of the game, is always the worst types of places to go out. But it felt like, he made it and then
yeah.
doesn't get to be in the jury. And so
So so from a an advantage being the people who won reward, normally going to tribal second means that you see who got voted out first.
yeah,
And
the
that can
information.
change how second tribal goes completely. So if, say for example, Sifu makes the jury, he's sitting there when they walk in, And Reba's like, oh shit, they got rid of one of the Reba, not knowing that Drew put his name out, just knowing that like they took a shot at Sifu or Drew. Luckily they hit Sifu, but that means we can't lose another number. And then they try to go to rocks with Austin, and Austin's just like, screw you guys, I'm not doing it. And then they actually end up potentially going to rocks
Mhm.
if Caleb doesn't say, go to rocks, like tie it once. We'll
Yeah.
try to convince him. Otherwise, vote me out. Don't go to rocks on my behalf. But like, if they see Sifu there, conceivably they could be like, well, Bello's really gunning for Reba. We can't lose another number
Yeah.
because then we're three. So
It's a cooler advantage, yeah, for the winners of like you get info and at
yeah,
tribal and stuff. And yeah, I just wish
but from
I think it was
logistics,
you don't need to do two people have that same gut punch of you made it, no, you
no.
didn't. Just kidding. One is plenty for me. One is necessary. I just want to make that clear. I do want the one gut punch. Those are necessary elements of these games, but the doubling up on it because to actually kind of have it land a little bit more because the old version of it doesn't land now that they've done it enough times. I understand what they're doing. I just not as much of a fan, but Sifu heads home. Bruce survives again, and then we get the second tribe rolling in for their tribal council. So at the winners tribal council, then or D's group's tribal council, it comes down to, as we alluded to before, Katura is the swing here. If Jake and Caleb have convinced her or not, do you think her mind was made up before tribal council, or do you think it was swayed at all? Her decision was swayed at all by what goes down at their tribal council? Because Caleb isn't as kind of over the top with his monologuing that he was last time around. Doesn't throw every last ditched I'll throw some other people under the bus, anything like that. It's a little more in control, a little more like I'm hoping that everything we did before, I don't have to do as much here. I'm relying on, if this is going to work, the conversations we had beforehand. But he's still the focus the whole time. He still is the one doing the most talking and kind of throwing out like, he doesn't say what their plan is, but he alludes to like, is this kind of a Reba Bello thing? And I was with Bello and, I got voted out once and made it back. And I'm trying to, find those couple friends that maybe didn't want to vote for me, whatever. Um, I felt like it was, once it happened, I was like, I feel like Katura was this, she had decided this before and none of it really affected it either way. Um, do you think the tribal had any effect, or was this how it was going to go the moment they walked in there?
I think that like I don't think the tribal really impacted it because we got confessionals both like at the beach. We got both confessionals of it makes the most sense to work with Caleb, blah blah blah. Like Caleb and I are still tight, and then by the end of it, I think I might vote with Reba. Like I don't like how those conversations went, and the fact that both of those confessionals bookended the conversations that she had with Jake and Caleb, I feel like it was fairly evident that like she knew what she was doing. And in all honesty, I know that Katura has taken some heat online for voting out Caleb, and I
I
wrote
think it
to her
was
and
the
I was
right
like,
thing to
look,
do.
yeah, it was 100% the right thing to do. Like she is playing for Katura. She's not playing for Caleb. It doesn't do her any good for Caleb to win $1 million at the end of the game. She wants to win $1 million at the end of the game. And those conversations only like reinforce the fact that she was at the bottom of her perceived alliance in every machination because every single other person on that beach knew about the idol and were actively working to get the idol. And the only person that the oh shit I lost my ring play was for Katura's benefit, to throw her off the scent, not to throw like Reba or anyone else. There was no one else there. So that can only be perceived as these people are all working together. I am on the outs once again, and they don't want to work with me. Now they want to work with me because they have to work with me. They've given me this information, but like it's arguably the absolute best move for her game. Bruce has already slandered her name in front of Austin and Drew and said that she was hesitant to vote out Caleb. So the fact that she is crossing quote unquote tribal lines with Austin at tribal to vote out Caleb when they hadn't even discussed it with her. It wasn't like Reba came over and said to Jake and Katura, hey, does one of
Yeah.
you want to vote for Caleb? They were kind of surprised as well. I think they were anticipating it going 3-3 and having to duke it out. So when they see that vote come down and Caleb go out, and then Jake also saying, like, Julie, it was me, we can talk when we get back, like, that's all to Katura's benefit, I think. Like, I think that she made the absolute right move. Like, it, the twist itself, splitting into two tribes, absolutely it would have cut Caleb's game short. Because other than the fact that D said, like, he said my name, and never have the people who get a unanimous vote that gets canceled out by an idol then turn around and come back, or advantage, and get voted out again, it always moves on to someone else. So let's make it stick. Like, Katura did everything right.
Yeah.
And Caleb did everything he could, but the twist being where it was in the game at this point, I don't think that there was any way for it to be not Caleb unless he specifically had an idol.
Yeah, they ended up in a group of 6 with 3 of the 4 people who were in the strongest alliance of the season. There was nothing to do, and there's like no even I don't even know what the argument is for Katura doing anything other than what she did, because she can also spin it all in every conversation she has a built-in way to spin it of like, hey, sure, I voted against a like new bellow person. We all voted for that person last time. Remember that? Remember, Bruce, your number one goal in this game. And even though you keep trying to throw me under the bus, I went and did the thing you wanted to do before and that you were
And
upset we
couldn't.
didn't do before. I voted Caleb out for you. You're welcome. Or like, I didn't vote anyone from our tribe out. I voted the one we all tried to vote out again, because my only other option was relying on me and Jake going to rocks. Like maybe that was it. And so I don't see how anyone could possibly be upset with her from who she,
No.
Kendra, Kelly, Bruce. I mean, Bruce will be for some reason. He'll be like, wait a minute,
Oh,
we
yeah.
should have kept Caleb now. What are you
I
doing?
wanted to vote him out.
Yeah. So he'll find a reason to be upset with her. But there was no, it's not just the good gameplay. There was also just no other option. Like that's the option for her.
Yeah.
There's a good option, or there's an option where you you it may, you draw rocks, I guess, with a 33% chance to go home, or a 33% chance that a person actually from your tribe who actually was the one kind of starting to want to be on their own and away from the group goes home. So yeah, there's no debate in my mind. She did the only logical thing, and Caleb's gone, and that's a bummer. I'm glad we will get to see him flashing that smile from the jury at every tribal council. I'm glad we'll get to hear him talk one more time. Can't wait to have him, what question or questions he comes up with 2 weeks to prepare here, what he wants to say in his monologue / question at final tribal council. So that's all great. The last thing to touch on, yeah, as you mentioned, Jake he immediately tells Julie in the moment. I think Julie knows in the
Yeah.
moment. It's pretty, maybe she's like, I don't know, Katura or Jake, but you don't have to say the words. Your face is already saying, Jake, clearly this didn't go the way you were hoping it went.
He
Does
smelled
it
a fart.
matter that he says something right then versus back at the beach? Does that comment in any way impact anything for the better or worse for him? I'm not sure it
Uh,
does. It's interesting that it happened because it's not something that regularly happens, but I
yeah.
ultimately don't know that it actually like moves the needle for him any tiny even bit, positive or negative. Like now she hates him more, or
Yeah.
she's like, wow, he immediately apologized. Like I don't think it actually impacts it, but it was noteworthy that he's quick to be like, he thinks it behooves me to immediately be like,
Yeah, it
clearly
was
that was
me.
me, I'm sorry, we'll talk about it later.
Yeah. And I mean, like, in a, it doesn't, yeah. Either way, Katura is going to be the one who's be like, I voted out Caleb. Like, when they get back to camp, because she's going to need to, as far as that goes. Because I guess in Jake's mind, the narrative is Katura flipped on us, voted out Caleb. But really, Katura did what the entire tribe wanted to do last week and voted out Caleb.
Yeah.
So I can see that, like, that conversation might happen between Jake and Julie. I don't know how much it'll change anything anyway. I can see I can see two things. I can either see Reba sort of picking up Katura and having like her and Emily sort of ride with them and be a 6-person alliance.
Yeah, they've got 6 out of the
Um,
10 now.
right. So I can see them do that and then just pick off the remaining Bello. Or I can see. I
They've got
guess
a
I can kind.
dominant 6 out of 10, like because they
Yeah,
had the
like
4 that have been super close through separation and being brought back together. Emily
yeah,
is now voted with 2 of them 2 times
yeah,
in a row and like been 100% honest and forthcoming twice in a row. So like has really built being a member of that with 3 of the 4. And she's not been with D yet, but she has been with
yeah,
the other 3 for one of those votes. And now Katura, might not be as built in of a relationship with them, but can say twice in a row, I went with you guys and did Caleb. And,
yeah,
one of those times it was against Bello's wishes. And the other time, while we all voted for it, Bello was the one thinking about not voting for it. So, yeah,
yeah,
they've got a super strong 6 if they want to play it that way. And especially those 4 are definitely in the driver's seat of like, we could play with these 6 and we just got to keep a lookout for when Emily and Katura realize the closer we get to 6, like they're going to be out on with us 4, but like
yeah.
they've got it in the driver's seat for sure.
Well,
So
yeah, and I
yeah,
mean, like Katura pulled a full Game of Thrones. I want him to know it was me. Like she again, that's what makes it such a like an excellent move. Is Reba hadn't, from what we saw, Reba hadn't approached her to try to flip her or anything like that. She just pulled a like, this is what's best for my game, and we are now at the individual portion when my game has to be considered as well as my alliance. And I think when it first happened, I was like, I don't I don't know how she moves forward from here, because I was sort of in shock that it happened. But then after I kind of took like a second or two and thought about it, I was like, no, she actually has a couple of different ways that she can go with that. Because really, she can go back to Bello and be like, look, he wasn't gonna stick with us, and I just happened to see it quicker and took the opportunity. Because really, that's the thing too. If you've got somebody like Caleb, how hard is it going to be to have another opportunity to take Caleb out definitively? Like, absolutely, you know that people aren't flipping on it. You know that this vote is going for Caleb. All you have to do is put your vote on top of that pile, because those 3, they're not voting for Jake or Katura. They are absolutely, unequivocally, 100% going for Caleb. So you can get the player that everybody just unanimously tried and failed to get out last vote by putting your one vote.
yeah.
And that's going to look kind of nice in a final tribal speech
Yeah,
of
she
being
gets to
like,
be the one
look,
that says she actually did it, as much
yeah,
as Caleb received however many
yeah,
15 votes across 2 tribals 2 nights. In the end it was hers that ultimately mattered. So he goes home, she is maybe in a new alliance, and we now head to handing out some awards to some potential new award winners. Let's start with the quote of the episode. I've got a couple nominees to throw your way, and then you may rebut with any other nominees of your own.
perfect.
Both of mine come from Drew during the during the challenge when he is up on his pole, and Kendra says, "Drew, you look great," and he comes back with, "I know, I'm a model up here," and then when it's down to him versus Kelly for his team, he just yells out to Jeff as Jeff keeps yelling at them to do better and stuff, doing his regular Jeff yelling at people thing. Drew's just like, if I win, Jeff, you've got to help me come down from here. And it's very simple, but I just found it very fun that Drew was like having some personality up on the pole. And I think those were my, oh, and then the other one is Kendra later on quoting her mom's quote that her mom likes to say to her, "You know what they say about assuming, you make an ass out of you and me," which is a great quote, although it's supposed to be, assuming. It's like not a perfect quote, but obviously it makes sense what they're going for, and it's wonderful, and I like it. So those are my nominees. Do you have any to add to that?
I do. So I had Drew's about Jeff helping him back down. Um, Emily's that almost got missed, but when Jeff said that they were going back to Lulu camp, she was just like, "Don't send me back there."
Yeah, that's
And it was
my
it was
trauma from
in
her
the
day.
mix of other audio, but you just hear that one resounding "Please don't send me back." And then the other one was Caleb, who it was such a snarky comment, and it's such like it's so something that I would say, and he said it, and I was like, "Yep, that." As soon as I heard it on Wednesday night, I was like, "That is going to be my quote of the week." And then when I re-listened, I was like, yeah, absolutely. Which was, I don't know how I made it 28 years without Bruce telling me what to do.
Yeah, that deserves to win because
Yeah,
he's not the only one who could have said that. Everyone's had opportunity to make a joke in that way.
it was so
And
good.
multiple have and probably will again. But yeah, I'll uh I'll make that a unanimous quote for Caleb on his way out the door. Obviously, the great talker deserves at least, I don't know if he's
Yes.
gotten one of these before. He has, because I've given him all the basketball references, but he deserves another one. As for the favorite moment of the episode, I believe the the one we kind of referenced, but didn't actually talk about the specific moment. There was one when they were at the sanctuary. They interspersed the sanctuary stuff with Jake, a big long confessional from Jake as he like laid. They always have him just sit in like funny positions
Yeah.
sometimes, and I always laugh of like, are you allowed to just be like, no, can I like sit regular on a rock, please? But like Jake is like laying down, like he's like posing in Titanic, hand like art, and like laying out his master plan and everything. And I'm just like, this like looks funny. They definitely like made him sit like that, obviously. But he says, Caleb and him, like, we're going to go deep together. D's the biggest threat. Julie's got to be the target, like, lays out smart gameplay and
Yeah.
everything. And it's really well intermixed and edited, but it just like looks funny because he's just like laying in the jungle all luxuriously and like, it's my time to make a move. That's my guy. That's my enemy. I'm taking out her number one. It's great master and commander stuff. And I just really liked that little moment. That, and then, of course, Emily confessional of saying that she's not going to work with Caleb because that got me excited, as we talked about before.
So same for Jake, except I referred to it as Jake's mid-movie Dom monologue.
Yeah.
Um,
Had to lay out
of
the whole there.
yeah,
Yeah, just had to give it the whole plot real quick, a recap and a
yeah.
preview of what's to come.
And then this may be the first time that I've ever seen the Mandela effect happen in real time, where they all came back from tribal and then just started talking about how it was 12 votes that were cast for Caleb. And then it just became fact that there were 12 votes that were cast for Caleb when in
Yeah.
actuality there were 11.
Which is still the
And
record, but yes, they
yeah,
were they were getting it. They were correct. Like, we saw something historic that's never happened, but
yeah.
they were a number off as far as what the record actually was.
But then they were adamant that that's what it was. So it was kind of cool to see that in real time because I know you've got like Berenstein versus Berenstain Bears and everything else. So it was kind of the first real example that I've seen play out of seeing what actually happened and then immediately seeing how it was perceived as something else. I mean, it was only a number off, but like it just became Caleb negated 12 votes. And then Austin was completely in the clear. Like I thought that Emily was going to count those as it went through, realized there's only 11. I 100% put money on Emily being the one to be like, somebody didn't vote.
I think we'll find out that Emily knows, because I agreed that there's no way Emily didn't count and knows
Yeah.
that there was 11 of them. But we just haven't found out yet. I refuse to believe she could say next episode that there was, tell us that she believes there's 12, and I'd be like, no, you're lying, right to all of
Yeah.
our faces. You counted, everything, Emily. You are the master of this season. Which brings me, mentioning Austin, right to then we'll give the best moment to Jake because we both had him as a nominee, so that wins out. Best gameplay, we talked, we both were in agreement. Katura makes the right decision.
Yeah.
I'm not going to nominate it for best gameplay because I think it was the right thing to do and the smart thing to do, but it was like the obvious thing to do necessarily. So good job. I'm glad that's what she did, but I'm not going to give it the award for like the smartest move ever because I felt it was mostly obvious and was mostly stunned that so many people seemed to think that it wasn't obvious and smart. I know it's good fortune that it happens to him, but I think the best gameplay is just the fact that Austin gets away with this extra idol and no one knows. And yes, he didn't do anything. It was the luck of like everyone just saying everyone voted and oh my god,
Yep.
unanimous 12 for 12. But the fact that he hides that or whatever. And I just think, he might not have done a lot of work to deserve this award, but I want to give him the award because I think that was the best strategic thing that happened in the course of the episode.
So I will give Austin the honorable mention, but for having the foresight, as I mentioned before, to not want Kelly gone immediately because it will increase his threat level, whether or not he has anything to do with Kelly being taken out. Super smart and
Yep.
good that he's thinking that far ahead. Um, However, my MVP will, or my best move will actually go to Katura for that, because so often we see people inadvertently sacrificing their own game for their alliance members without really seeing that far ahead. But being able to see this is what's going on in every corner of the game. And yes, Caleb is tight with me, and I trust Caleb, and Caleb trusts me. But Caleb being in the game doesn't necessarily mean that that's best for my game right now. And so often we've seen like alliances of 2 or 3 just get taken out one after the other because they're in such lockstep that what's the saying, you can't see the forest for the trees.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna give it to her for best moment, because it's nice to see somebody actually do it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll split on that one. 2 awards are given out. Worst gameplay, I honestly didn't have anyone that like I thought did anything dumb. Maybe I give the worst gameplay to the producers for splitting them into 2 teams.
Yep.
Because I don't think anyone did I think everyone voted the way they ultimately probably should have for their own sake, and no one like made a dumb vote. I mean, I guess by default, Jake, because it doesn't work out for him, and now he's painted himself the top enemy potentially, while of people who were still on the other side of alliances from him, but that he maybe wasn't the first thought when they're looking to the Bellow tribe of who to pick off next, and maybe now he is. So I guess him, because his was the only thing that backfired, or the one you know his face did say it all at the end of the episode. He clearly, things didn't go the way he would have liked, and his game was hurt. So while I don't think it was stupid of him, I think just have people try to make moves and some of them don't work, and that's the game. But I think by default, because no one did anything that I would call like stupid or dumb, I think he lost the most this episode, certainly, which I guess is a way to give out this award.
Yeah, I will echo producers for splitting them into
Yeah,
2
let's give it to
tribes
them.
again, once merged. I will also give a very dishonorable mention to Jeff Probst for making yet another worst play, for taking more shots at Adam Klein and not seeing how much of an asshole he looks after that. And I mean, there's not much more to say about that one. And other than that, I will say actually Bruce, for just mishandling the conversation with Couture. And I know that that was his intention, was to
Yeah, but it was a
throw
stupid intention.
mistrust,
Yeah.
but I don't think it was viable. I don't think it was smart. And
There
I
wasn't
think,
benefit to be derived from it the way he thought in his head there's benefit to be derived from it.
yeah, like saying to Katura in front of 2 people from the opposing tribe or the opposing alliance, so was it what Caleb said at Tribal that made you vote for him? Because I know you were hesitant before. Like, that doesn't sit well for me, no matter who he's saying it to. And not just because, like, I like Katura a lot. Like, he could have said it to anybody from his alliance or anybody at all. If you're having that conversation in front of other people that aren't part of your alliance, that's not cool, dude. And it's going to come back to you. And I think that that's going to be what bites him in the ass.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you pointed those ones out. I think we give it to the producers, but yeah,
Yeah.
Bruce actually did do the only thing I would disagree with and think was a bad game move, but we're giving it to the producers.
Yeah.
They deserve an
There you
award
go.
every now and again, even if it's the negative one.
You're
Um,
welcome.
and the MVP of the episode, I will say I'm a little torn between Jake and Katura. I think they were both definitely 2 of the focal points of the episode. I lean towards Jake, as much as obviously, again, where we differ slightly, and I'm looking at this award purely as entertainment. And the value of my viewing experience of the episode. Obviously, things don't go Jake's way in the end. And so if you're factoring in more so of the game portion and who had the best day as far as their game is considered, if you lean that way, I'd almost go with D, because she was also entertaining and had some spotlight in this episode and clearly advanced her game in a big way. So I lean Jake. What say you?
I say Katura, not just because I told her that I would, but also because
It would be pretty bad
she.
to go back on your word.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
know,
as
right?
a potential future Survivor player, you don't need to be out here going back on your
No,
word over and podcast. You save it
right?
for the beach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I told her she had best moment and she was my MVP. And like she, the confessionals throughout, it's kind of as much as we gave the producers the worst move. It's also the progression of her confessionals from the start of the episode to the end of the episode told the entire story of her thinking she was tight with everybody. And like at first, she had that conversation with Caleb immediately and was like, look, Bruce is really gunning for you. Like, this is what we need to do to circumvent that. To then being put in the same group with him and being like, Caleb and me are tight, to then starting to put that distance between the two of them, right up to maybe I'm going to vote with Reba tonight. I don't really know them that much. I haven't talked to them that much, but that might be what's best for my game. And to be able to work that out and to go from the known to the unknown based on what's going to progress your game is a pretty bold fucking move. So I'm going to give it to Katura.
Love it. All right. One vote Jake, one vote Katura, both MVPs and definitely both proving to be favorites of this podcast. And now
Yes.
we will see if either one of them can crack the power rankings for either one of us as we move to the final segment. I kind of lied at the start of this podcast, Tony. I didn't realize. I don't know. I'm looking at my power ranking list now and I forget what it was last week, but there wasn't as much turnover as I thought. Maybe there was. I don't remember. I don't remember who I had. I might actually have 4 of the 5 be the same. It just feels a lot different. I feel very solid. I haven't felt solid in my positioning of folks now. And while I do still see there being a path to victory for basically anyone not named Bruce, he's the only one that like I could see a path to him getting to the final 3. I just can't see a
Oh,
path to him
totally.
at this point getting people to vote for him in the end. I could still see it for everyone, but I feel really good about the people that are in pole position, which mine are as follows. Kelly, I have a new, just someone I fall in love with every season of any of these shows, and she's it this season. She's my favorite for sure. I'm glad I picked her as my winner pick on no info going in, and she's at the top of my power rankings, not because I want to be right about my winner's pick, but like I just think she's playing really well and in a fantastic position. I've got D second, Austin third, Emily fourth, Katura fifth, and I honestly could see the argument for putting Emily and Katura above everyone else because Kelly and D definitely are building the profiles as kind of the head of the snake of the two snakes that are out there. D much more so than Kelly, which is why I'm like nervous about D might be in too strong of a position right now. And that, makes me weary that it's hard to be in that strong a position at 10 and make it all the way to 3. But yeah, I've got Kelly and D kind of riding up top. Austin, Emily, and Katura as the next like kind of clear tier to me. And then everyone else after that. And really Bruce is the odd person out is like the only one I think like you're not winning because I don't know how you get the votes. I would find it hard to believe at this point Drew or Julie or Jake wins, but I could see a path to them getting there and I could see them being likable enough that if they got there with the right people, they could. I guess there's a world I could still see them winning, but I feel pretty certain and pretty good about my top 5 now. What say you? What's your rankings looking like this week?
What is your list again?
Kelly, D, Austin, Emily, Katura.
So we different orders, but we do have everybody the same.
Wow, we finally did it. 5 for 5. All right.
Exactly.
All
So,
right. What's your order? What's your version of this wonderful 5?
Power ranking for spot D's toes, and D attached to them, followed by Kelly, then Emily, Katura, and Austin.
Okay. Yep.
I feel that Austin's got too much ammunition for it to play out the way that he wants to. and I think that he may be. I think that he's the one that Dee will perceive within the four to be her biggest competition.
Once if
So
she knows, because
yeah,
she
she
again,
knows.
she
Yeah,
assumes, and her and Julie are much too smart to not eventually ask or have already asked and we
yeah,
just didn't see. But like, hey, Austin, so did you vote or not vote? Like, what's the sitch with that
right.
idol that you did tell us you had? But who knows? They're convinced that there was 12 votes, so maybe he can pull it off. But uh,
Well,
it will. You are correct, spot on. That
yeah,
obviously that group of four, whenever they ultimately decide to go at each other, it's a pretty clear cut 2-2 of the women versus the men within that group.
yeah, and it really comes down to if Austin and Drew have Emily, if Julie and Dee can pull in Katura to have that third member,
Yeah, that's
because they
Katura's
already,
inroad for sure. Is
yeah,
if she can read that situation and realize, like, hey, your little foursome, those other two
yeah,
got a third. Like Emily ain't signed with you. She's with them. She's thrilled
yeah,
to be in that club that she's never been in socially in her life, it seems like, and really loving it. So like, you need me. So let's hope that Katura, as a very pro Katura podcast here, can see that and wiggle her way in that manner. But yeah, I think one of those five's winning. I would be
yeah.
pretty
And Jake
shocked.
is sixth. Jake's like right there.
Okay.
And I it's funny because when I did the power ranking before we recorded, I was like, oh, right, that's 50% of the cast now
Yeah.
because we're in final 10.
Yeah. Next
Um,
week we're gonna have to cut from 5 to 4. I think we have to
yeah,
slowly whittle it down, our list down to 3. We'll keep it at 3.
yeah,
But at some point here, we got to start saying these are the instead of power ranking, start updated predictions of who do we think's making the final 3. I think
yeah.
will be the more
And
interesting thing to keep track of.
man, you know what? Like, I love Austin. I love Jake. Like, I have no problem with Drew either. Like, they're all great players. I really want to see an all female final three. And I think that this is the season that we do it because there's so many strong female competitors this season. And the cream is really rising to the top.
And
Like,
they do mention it in the next week on.
yeah,
That is the first part of the next week on is the women on the beach. I think is it 6 to 4 then right
yeah,
now of the 10
yeah,
that are left, right? Yeah. Austin, Drew, Bruce, and Jake. And
yeah,
then yeah, everyone else. Yeah. So um I'm with you. I think the best players are all the women,
yeah,
as my list also has 4 of the 5, at the top being the women, and only doesn't have Julie on it because I think she's just kind of like behind, and she would have Julie's path to victory is in the next episode or two backstabbing D in a shocking move of like, I got in the position you don't want to be in of being perceived as the number two to someone. And the only way for that person to get out of this is, and the earlier they do it, the better, is to take out that person and be like, no, I'm no one's number two. I
yeah,
have my own game. I'm doing my own things. So unless Julie does that though, she and Drew is the same reason I have
same.
Austin instead of
Yeah.
Drew on the power ranking is like, you're the number two in that. I adore the two of you. I
Oh,
look at the two of you
absolutely.
as equals, but I think in the game, slowly but surely, everyone is going to, even if they don't find out about all the advantages Austin has, kind of view Austin's the threat here. Drew's his like right hand guy. But I think Drew, I believe Drew. I don't know. On one hand, I'm like, he seems like the most obvious to like snake his guy, but he also seems like the most obvious to be like, that's my guy, that's my bro. I'll lose. I don't care. Like, I'll get voted out. I'm not going against him. We're going to the final tribal together. I want to be a loyal best friend buddy type of guy. Like, I can see him personality wise going either way, and I'll be
Yeah,
interested to say. He's
there's yeah, there's so many comparisons between Austin and Drew and Steven and JT that like I don't want it to go down the same way.
hmm.
Because I prefer Steven. But I think there's a very delicate balance. And like you said, next like episode or two is when this needs to be done because you need to, for lack of a better term, you need to snake those people and put them on the jury with enough time for them to cool down to be your cheerleader again. Because if you're at final four and you smoke them and put them on the jury bitter,
Yeah,
they
they
can
vote
just
the
as
next
easily
day.
campaign against you. And not to say that those people, like, not to say that Dee or Austin would be a better jury member, because I think that they both really appreciate this game and the game that therefore has been playing. But I think that in both cases, if you don't give Dee or Austin enough time to cool down afterwards and to be able to step back from it, that you could have a situation where it's harder to bring them back around at Final Tribal while you're also trying to curry other votes.
Yeah, for sure. I'm with you. And on that note, the final thing then is one wish, one prediction for next week's episode. We already alluded to the next week on shows us. One of the brief little bits we get is the women saying, like, should we do a girls majority? We get Jake scrambling for an idol. None of that matters though, because what really matters is they tell us that the Survivor auction is back and they're doing an auction. So I'm guessing your wish and or prediction is maybe around that. Mine, at least one of mine is, are you excited for the auction? And what's your wish? What's your prediction for episode number 8?
Excited for the auction, glad it's back, understand why it hasn't been brought back, because what everybody was doing was they were just sitting on their money until the advantage came. So my hope is that all of the auction items are covered and the advantages are spread out so that there's more than one advantage and that there could be an advantage.
The first item should be an advantage.
Yeah. Something to just like take it out of the running and then have the rest of it be what it is. Because if everybody goes in for it and they have to draw rocks or whatever they do, they love rocks, so I'm sure that they will, and then go from there, fine. But like I always liked the ones where it was like, here's a covered thing. This is what you won. I have not taken the lid off of it yet. Do you want this one or do you want this one that is also covered? And then do you want to see what you lost? And that could be like you just lost an advantage because they're peppered all through it. But I know that they have, because otherwise they wouldn't have brought it back. But I hope that they found a way to circumvent the everybody sits on it and then just throws it all in on the advantage. Austin won't, because he wants a sandwich. So Austin will get his sandwich. That is my prediction. My other quasi hope is that I hope that Katurah is able to solidify herself with Julie and Dee or something else that makes her safe again. I don't see there being a lot of fallout, but I just want her to have a firm standing in the game.
Yeah. My wish, actually, I have two wishes. I have a wish and then I have a prediction that comes with a kind of wish attached to it. My biggest wish is that Emily takes something really meaningful from another person in the auction and doesn't realize how mad they are or how meaningful it was to them. Like, is just like doing her, I'm calculating this is what I want or whatever.
Yeah.
And doesn't realize what's, why someone's so upset. Sorry for anyone who can hear my dog barking. My puppy recently in the last week has learned how to use his voice, and now he barks every night because he thinks someone's coming to the door, or he might think he's now sticking his little nose in the cat door. So that's happening. But so that's my number one wish. I hope Villain Emily is present at the auction, because it's a ripe place for some villainy to take place. My prediction is that Bruce will go home, and I just think everyone has had enough, and I don't see him winning an immunity challenge. And so I think he's going to go home, but I don't think, lines are going to necessarily be drawn quite yet. I think it's going to turn into a pretty unanimous thing. And my wish that comes on top of that is, because if Bruce goes home next, while I feel bad because I love the guy, I hate the idea of like the live feeds in Big Brother. It's just too much for me. The reason I've never watched Big Brother is because I can't do 3 episodes. I can't do live feeds. I can't do all of that.
Same.
I would want a live feed of Ponderosa if the first person that walks in is Bruce and Caleb's like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. This guy, I have to hang out with this guy solo for a couple of days. He's going to act like my dad. He's going to like want to go teach me he's going to make me work on the beach or something. Like so I think that would be kind of funny. And I just think I don't think the big moves in war that's going to take place will take place yet. I think everyone will get on the same page and we'll be like, you know what? We all kind of we've all kind of had this feeling more other, and Katura will be like, finally, finally, oh my God, it's like water in the desert. Finally, yes, please. All here, I found an advantage. You have it. I won this at the auction. You have it. Please just vote for him. Get him out of there, and we can all rejoice. And Katura will win. Katura versus Bruce will go down as Katura with the victory.
What what if they have, like, I know we have beware advantages, right? Like in the game. I'm expecting at least one beware or like negative
Yeah,
in the
beware
auction.
auction item of like,
Somebody's losing their vote at the auction.
yeah, like I promise you this is the best thing we're offering anyone.
Yeah.
There's an extra layer to it. Bid on it. You don't know what that layer is, but basically like the beware auction item. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that'd be interesting.
Man, can you imagine if like they think they've getting covered item, they think they're getting a steak or something like that, and they take the
Now
cloche
you have
off
to have this
or a
beware
cloche
advantage,
off.
and you have to
Not
learn this
even.
song and dance and do it in front of everyone without them noticing, and then Jeff will hand you an idol in front of them.
Yeah, or they just say like you take it off and it just says you've lost your vote at tribal in
Yeah,
front of
well,
everyone. That's I can see that happening. I would rather them being like, here's a thing you have to read in private later.
yeah, I'm okay with there being like a beware
Yeah,
style, like here's an
100%.
extra step to something. I would be very upset because
Yes.
in line with the like production having too heavy of a hand on the outcome of the game, if it was
Mm-hmm.
like I bid all
Sorry.
my money and like thought I was gonna get my sandwich and now you took my vote away, and like
Yeah, and everyone
purely
knows.
out of randomness, and everyone knows or doesn't know. I wouldn't want that, but I'm down
No.
for there's like an extra layer to this,
Yes.
and so
See?
we've introduced higher risk reward, but there needs to be the reward with it, not just
Yeah.
like you randomly get penalized and
Yeah.
too bad, because it's interesting for 3 seconds on TV, but now it sucks for you in your game. So
Jeff just stands behind it, and as they lift it, he just flips them off.
what if one of the auction items is paid for casting lessons with Adam Klein?
Oh, it better be. I would do that.
That would be the ultimate
Oh my
way,
God, that'd be
olive
amazing.
branch of
Yes.
prepaid. We bought you full suite of packages, full unlimited cast coaching with Adam Klein for your next next reality venture that you're honored to
Yeah.
pass to a friend to try to come on
Yeah.
Survivor.
Absolutely. I think this is the first one that we're going to clip and post
Yeah, sure.
and tag Jeff Probst in
Good
it.
job, Adam. I may or may not be signing up for your services at some point in the very near future because the prices were totally fair, and I appreciate that.
Don't tell Jeff.
So yeah, don't tell. Yeah, I actually, if and when maybe I do sign up for his services, I will make it clear to him I appreciate you. I think Jeff's being mean, but I want no one to know we work together because it seems
Yeah.
like there's a chance the guy clearly is a little upset about it. So I don't think it's a good thing for anyone to know, but I do want your help. It seems
Yeah.
to be a good thing. Yeah.
Jeff's
Okay.
got some feelings.
Yeah. So that's that. Those are all our feelings. Survivor 45, episode 7. We'll be back next week, as always, sometime between Thursday and Tuesday. And next week is not holiday for me. So yeah, we'll for sure be back next week. The week after, maybe a little tricky. We'll find a way. We'll figure it out. We'll be here, but and it won't even be tricky. It will still be between Thursday and Tuesday. It's a big wide range for a reason. So
Sure is.
with that, thanks everyone for listening. Subscribe, follow if you're still here somehow listening an hour and a half later. We appreciate you. We love you, and we will talk to you next week.